So I can't take credit for the idea behind this video. I'm 97% sure that it was Nathan Damigo talking about this idea on The Daily Shoah, so shout out to him. The idea is this: the right has given over almost entirely the use of language to their enemy. I'm just as guilty of this as anybody else, because I've been inundated with all the typical propaganda, just politically in the media, public schools, etc. There's a proverb, you may have heard of it, Confucius, I think. It goes, "The beginning of wisdom is to call things by their proper name." Now, it may seem innocent enough to, what's the big deal? It's just language, right? But these tiny lies accumulate to the point where now the West is bleeding to death by 6 guerrillion paper cuts, each of which is a seemingly harmless word that's been co-opted by the left and pushed through the institutions and added to our repertoire to the point where now even our side just uses this as common dialogue. If something is repeated often enough in the media and in everyday discourse, then it will eventually catch on, as they say, become memed into reality. But I want to give you hope, because we can push back, okay? An example of this, a very clear example of this, is Trump's use of the term fake news. Now, if you remember, fake news, he flipped this on the reporters. They were using fake news to discredit the alt media, people doing real journalism on social media, just because something, hasn't gotten a lot of coverage. Gee, I wonder why. I wonder why mainstream sources aren't reporting on this stuff, because it goes against their agenda, maybe. And so they're just calling it fake news, conspiracy theory, etc. And so this flipping tactic can work if you have a big enough reach, like Trump does. If you don't have that kind of power, I think an even better strategy then is to, a better tactic is to go and rename some of these little lies and reclaim them, like in the game of Risk, where we are fighting for territory in the Stefan Molyneux likes to say this a lot, I prefer to fight the battle of words rather than the battle of swords. And we haven't been very good at the battle of words, because we give in to their propaganda. We'll counter signal it a little bit, but this is war, okay? So in war, neutral terms are not enough. We have to use rhetoric too. We have to instill, condense all of our arguments into something that's powerful, in just a single word or a single phrase, and put that out there. And just by the fact that we're not engaging in their language, that will signal to other people that it's okay to be on our side. One of my favorite examples of this is the leftist meme of refugees. So if you talk about refugees, you're essentially doing the left's work for them. Even if you are talking about it and saying you're opposed to refugee resettlement, because the person just hears the word refugee, right? And, well, gee, you've accepted that, and so they can already insert that argument of what about the children? So firstly, let's talk about truth. The statistics don't bear this out. If you look at it, less than 3% of people, black and brown people, basically, who are moving from Africa and the Middle East into Europe, less than 3% of those can actually be considered refugees, according to the UN's own estimate. But here's the important part. Do not call them migrants either, okay? That migrants is a neutral term. Why not invaders? That's what they are. These people are not welcome. It's only the politicians who are inviting them into our countries. And it goes against what we stand for. So invaders is a term that's imbibed with emotion, just like the term refugee. You think of refugee and it conjures up images of fluffy puppies and flowers. So yes, this can be difficult to do in casual conversation. Clearly, the more people who are doing it and the more it's repeated, the easier it will get. That's the whole point. But once we accomplish that, it's extremely powerful magic. And I use that term as a philosopher. It does seem like magic, your language. And I would go so far as to say, just to demonstrate the power, I would go so far as to say that arguing for open borders for invaders, right? You say, yeah, I do actually think we should allow these invaders into our country and just let them walk all over us. Now, I said that a bit sarcastically, but even without the sarcasm, I think that would be more effective in persuading someone than if you were to just go out there and argue against allowing migrants into the country. And yes, not all of them are going to go out and they don't all have swords and they're not all striking people down and charging on cavalry. But nonetheless, are they not invaders? Think about it. That's my message. Do not passively accept these terms which have been dictated by the enemy. No matter how established it is, no matter how habitual it seems to talk about it in these terms. Yes, we inherit language largely, and it's a shame that we've inherited such a degraded version of meaning now. But at the same time, language is a negotiation. And so new invented terms are added to the dictionary, the lexicon, all the time. And when an idea catches on, or when a meme, whatever you want to call it, a new idea of a language, a new name for something catches on, like fake news, it spreads like a virus, and suddenly everybody's using it. So I will just leave you with some examples. I don't have anywhere near Trump's reach, millions of followers on Twitter, obviously. But this is sort of a short list that I came up with of territories in language that the right can claim back. So number one, instead of arguing against white privilege or the wage gap, no, these are just anti-white, anti-male conspiracy theories. I alluded to this earlier. The left has been using conspiracy theories because they've gotten a hold of the political climate, and they have pushed conspiracy theories. That term on to people who are just talking about something which isn't very commonly known, or which isn't accepted by the mainstream sources. Gee, I wonder why the mainstream sources aren't talking about this. It couldn't possibly be that it doesn't fit their agenda. So I think we have our guy is now in office, so to speak, and so we can sort of turn this back on them and get them on the run. They're the loons now, and it's true. I mean, who believes in the wage gap anymore? Nobody's a feminist anymore. So number 2, instead of saying abortion, what is this, a Tom Clancy novel? It's so robotic. No, this is a term that I've never really heard before, but I looked it up and it's actually a word. Call it feticide. Because that sounds a lot like genocide. That sounds a lot like democide. All of these side terms, which is what it is. It's killing the fetus. And so don't use this robotic, I'm going to abort the baby now. We're going to push the eject button in 3, 2, 1. Whoosh, there goes the baby. Okay, you can now go have more sex. No. It's feticide, and it's disgusting, and it needs to stop. Number 3. Instead of calling government restrictions on firearms, instead of calling that gun control, whereas citizens who are just using self-defense, that they get labeled as perpetrators of gun violence. No, we're going to flip this, okay? Now, this one would be hard to do because flips are harder than renaming, as I said. But you flip this, and now restrictions on purchasing guns are deemed acts of gun violence, right? So say Congress is trying to get a gun restriction passed in Congress, right? Well, that's a gun violence bill, okay? Because the violence is towards the guns, towards a Second Amendment. Now, people who are standing their ground, they're actually initiating gun control, right? Control is a good thing. And we want personal control. We just don't want government to have control over our lives, right? That's what we don't want. So, no, to flip this, and people defending themselves, they are exercising control, and they should be applauded because they've exercised gun control. Number 4. This is a tricky one, but big. Okay, socialism and communism, right? Socialism sounds like socializing. Communism sounds like community. What can we do about this? Well, I kind of thought, what are these things really, and what do they most resemble? What they really are is political HIV or AIDS. Okay, so communism is an immunodeficiency disorder or virus which spreads throughout the society and attacks the healthy parts of that society. Number 5, instead of saying anti-fascist, call them fascist. No, I'm just kidding. Well, so, yeah, you know the meme. But ISIS, right? ISIS, what does that stand for? Islamic State of Iraq and Syria. Well, Antifa is the new ISA, Islamic State of America. I rest my case. Number 6, instead of saying a globalist, I don't really like this term globalist. Tell me what you think, but like globalist, it sounds good in a way. It's like, hey, I'm a globalist. I'm for global humanity, right? To the normie, that might sound good. But I think, I came across this word Kabbalist. If you look up Kabbalist, that relates to the Jewish term Kabbalah, which is this Jewish mystical, I guess, cult or organization, and they have a lot of power, essentially Jewish mafia. But I think the Kabbalist I like, and this is also, by the way, where our term Cabal comes from today. So yeah, I really like this term. I'm going to start using it, I think. Kabbalist. Am I saying that right? But yeah, I mean, some people, maybe they're not comfortable saying Jewish mafia or New World Order even. Maybe it sounds a little kooky, right? But Kabbalist is a good in-between, because it's still calling out the Jews, right? If people go and look up that term, bam, Judaism is attached right to that word. But it's essentially representing the same thing as globalists. Number 7, instead of saying mainstream media pundit, say fake news peddler. That's what they're doing. Pundit is some kind of expert, but a peddler is somebody who's pushing things, usually in a dishonest way, for money. They're merchants. Number 8, instead of, so you go to these rallies, right? And one of the chants you hear from the left is "Love Trump's hate," and just in general, the idea of Republicans are filled with hatred and bigotry and blah blah blah. Well, I wouldn't counter signal that. What are you gonna gain by arguing against? I'm not hateful. I have a black friend, so I'm not hateful. No, so I would say just come back with your own, little trope. And a good one I came up with is strength trumps weakness. You can even chant it, turn it into our own thing. Strength trumps weakness. Strength trumps weakness. Strength trumps weakness. Yeah, I mean, you really want to get people in a frenzy. There you go. But yeah, you're not hateful. I know I'm not hateful. We know each other. We're not hateful. So who are you trying to prove this to? They're not going to change their minds because they're the ones resorting to name calling. Number 9, I'll end with this one. Instead of saying, this is kind of far out there, but hey, what are YouTube channels for? Instead of saying Democrat or Democratic Party, call them terrorists. They are the terrorist party. And that's right. I do mean all Democrats, right? We've had enough violence out there in the streets perpetrated against the right wing. I forget who it was. Some outlet came out on our side. Some outlet came out with a list. Might have been the Daily Caller. Somebody came out with a list since all the acts of violence perpetrated by the left against the right since, say, summer of last year. And it's a long list. And what are your average normie Democrats doing? I don't hear many of them condemning. I mean, it's kind of like half-hearted condemning, Bernie Sanders says, "Oh, I condemn the most recent attack, this Alexandria shooter, in the strongest terms possible," and then that's it. Well, just saying you do something doesn't, it's like asking for forgiveness. I mean, it's not enough, in my opinion, and the mainstream media is even worse. There I go, using their terms again, right? Mainstream media. Well, if we want that to be the case, if we don't want them to be the mainstream media, then I say part of that process involves not calling them mainstream anymore. You could call them the extreme media, right? They are pretty damn extreme, if you ask me, because they have these figures on there like Yvette Falarka from BAM, and just, you know, allowing them to say, yeah, I mean, maybe violence isn't such a bad idea. So I think absolutely you could actually characterize Democrats as terrorists. A terrorist is just somebody who's using violence for political ends. And this shooter, as I was saying, the Alexandria shooter, most recent example of this, he worked on Bernie's campaign. You know, it doesn't seem like he's just like, oh, you want to say mental health, he's this lunatic. I'm sure he was, by our standards, he's probably not very stable. But then a lot of people out there aren't very with it. You know, your average Democratic voter, I would say, probably has a few screws loose. So this is what I'll wrap up with, and just want to say, like, the right needs a creativity boost. We need to do what the left has done for decades by building a political climate that will be receptive to the kinds of policies we want to get through. And language is a huge part of this. So I invite you, please, I want to hear from you. Go down below to the comments section and give me your example of a leftist term that you think we could put a twist on and retake some of this territory back. The more of this energy that we get going, you know, even if 90% or 98% of those memes fail, we'll have accomplished something. If one of them gets through and goes and breaks through out there, and with your help, I think we can do it. All right. Take care, everybody. Godspeed.